know that the Bible reveals the exact location where the devil lives? Yes, you heard that right. The Bible tells us the precise location where Satan resides and where his throne is permanently established. If you look at Revelation 2:13, it says, "I know where you live, where Satan has his throne. Yet you remain true to my name. You did not renounce your faith in me, not even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was put to death in your city, where Satan lives." You only need to look at the line right above that to find the location. Revelation 2:12 addresses the angel of the church in Pergamum. The city of Pergamum had its name changed to Burma, which is now a city in Turkey, in the Middle East. According to the Bible, this is where Satan's permanent home is.
See, this is one of the reasons why I walked away from the Bible. Because when I had the opportunity to go to Turkey, and at that time frame I was believing in Christianity, I went to the city of Pergamum in Turkey because I wanted to, see the places that the Bible was talking about. Because at that time frame, I believe that Revelations was talking about us today, talking about how we were living today, what was going to come to pass today. But going to the city of Pergamum in Turkey, or Burma, I came to realize when I was there and I started learning about the history of Pergamum that it was a complete fabrication, that the book of Revelations had anything to do with us today. Because what you see in Pergamum today, or Burma today, you will not see, it was not there. What you see there today is not what was there in the late 1st century, early 2nd century, when the book of Revelation was actually written. So is this the place that Satan lives? Hell no, it is not. Because when you understand the history of the city, you will understand. I'm going to tell you right now. So the first thing that we must unpack from this is the fact that the city of Pergamum was a huge trading and huge cultural center of what was called Asia Minor. Turkey used to be part of Asia Minor. And in Pergamum, one of the things that they established, and the reason why in Revelations 2, when it's talking about this church, is the fact that that was one of the only cities that was the first city in Asia Minor that built temples to whatever Caesar was living at that time frame. So there are there was a temple to Trajan, there was a temple to Augustus Caesar, there was a temple to Stepius. I'm saying that name wrong, more than likely. But there were temples built to that person, to the emperor. And every day they had to go and pay homage and worship in the temple of Caesar. But the Christians were dealing with a struggle. When you read Revelations 2, you will see that it says that they have a two-edged sword. Not the two-edged sword that Jesus talked about, that speaks of in Revelation, where it talks about Jesus having a sword, a two-edged sword for his tongue, coming out of his mouth. It's not talking about words. It's the fact that the Roman government, and in Pergamum, the proconsul for Asia Minor lived there, that he had the ability of a two-edged sword, meaning that the sword could either take away life or the sword could give life. You could either be forgiven or you can be murdered, killed, for not participating in worshiping Caesar in your daily practices. And the fact of the matter is, some Christians who were there did not, while others did participate, which is why it talks about the Nicolaitans in that verse as well, and in that chapter as well, talk about the Nicolaitans, because the Nicolaitans were Hellenistic Christians who were still worshiping some of the gods of the Romans, like Aphrodite and the Roman emperor and Zeus. Because one of the other things there was one of the largest temples to Zeus was also there. Zeus's throne was there, and Zeus was called Soter, which means savior. So some of them were still participating in that and eating food from the temples, the sacrificed food from the idols that was sacrificed to the idols of those temples. And they were also participating in, according to their detractors, they were also participating in temple prostitution, having sex with different priestesses who was there. And so it was a warning against the Nicolaitans not participating like them, because they didn't uphold the strict Jewish doctrine. You see, early Christians believed that you had to still uphold strict Jewish dietary rules, moral laws, things of that nature. Of course, that's all changed now to a certain degree, but the same way they had denominations, same way you have denominations now, you had different denominations of Christianity in late first century and early second century. So there is no golden era of Christianity. So the throne of Satan, to which they are speaking of in Revelation 2, is actually talking about the Romans and their temples to Caesar, their temple to Zeus, and their temple to Asclepius. Now, I didn't talk about this in a video I did a couple of days ago about Asclepius, but the main temple for Asclepius was also in Pergamum. And because it was the serpent, he was represented by the serpent, there was the idea that the medicines, it was a hospital, was also part of the temple. And although they would prescribe medicine, there was also psychological and superstitious types of medical procedures that they believed in. No poisonous snakes were allowed to be in the temple, but other non-poisonous snakes were allowed to just roam around the temple / hospital of Asclepius. And many of the Christians and Jews and Greeks and everybody else thought that this is where they go to get healed from different things. And so they would literally go there and lie on the floor and hope that one of those serpents will touch them and then they will be healed. Where does that sound familiar? It sounds familiar from the book of Numbers, where there was Exodus, where there was vipers that this God had sent down to kill. The Yahweh sent down to kill those who had been disobedient and impatient towards this God. And then a bronze serpent was put on a pole, and then if you looked upon it, you would be healed. Well, in the temple of Asclepius, it was that if one of those serpents touched you, then you will be healed. And this is what they believed. And so, although they have similar stories, it wasn't until the Greeks came in and took control of Pergamum in around the 4th century BCE that this teaching started to be part of the people in Asia Minor. And it's possible that that story was moved over into the Exodus story, because the Exodus story is not written at that time frame, or it was written, but then it was written, but other additions were still being made to the Torah in the 4th century BCE. The Torah wasn't closed until around the 2nd, 3rd century CE. So many edits were still being done, and these stories of Asclepius were most likely added to the writings in the Torah. So what John is talking about here is the fact that they are participating in it, or praising them for not participating in it. But he does say that one of the problems I do have with you is your participation and acting like the Nicolaitans in this city of Pergamum, worshiping Caesar, eating the meats and foods from the sacrifices to what they call false idols, believing in their medicines. If it wasn't for Hippocrates, then doctors would be taking the Galilean oath, because second to Hippocrates was Galilean, who was a doctor who formed some of our modern medicine techniques today, and he was in Pergamum. Luke, who is said to have been a doctor, lived in a city that was nearby Pergamum, so he may have also attended this hospital, and learned from that hospital in Pergamum. So that's just a little side information. But that is what it's talking about. That is not Satan's home, and it can't be a permanent home, because later on in Revelations it talks about how the Satan and the beast and the false prophet will be thrown into the lake of fire at the end of it. So how can that be Satan's permanent home? It can't be his home. It can't be his permanent home. It doesn't work that way. But Christians will believe it. And I saw many Christians there in Pergamum who were praying and all this sorts of thing, praying for Pergamum, believing this was Satan. They were battling Satan spiritually. And so it just demonstrates how Christians will literally believe almost anything that somebody says that may be validated in one part of the Bible, but history, archaeology, shows an entirely different story, and the Bible itself will give them an entirely different story. So it just demonstrates how people will make this Bible fit whatever narrative they have grown up and been indoctrinated into. The only permanent home of Satan is in your mind if you let it be, and that's it. So comment, like, subscribe, and share. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable.